Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a trip down nostalgia lane, if you will, and take a look at what was happening with Rex and I all the way back in January of 2025. We had for you that month four exclusive reviews that we put online for you. And I got to tell you, January of last year was actually a pretty good month. Out of the four movies, three of them were really well. They're worth watching. Harbin was one of them. Harbin was a story about the assassination of Ito, and it dealt around the labor and the unions and what have you. And if this were a book, they would call it historical fiction, but it's in the celluloid range, and as such, it made for a very interesting and fascinating movie. Laws of Man was about two FBI special agents, and wow, these guys just really ran into it. I would not want to have had this particular assignment that they were on. It was well acted, very well done. Some big name stars showed up in it, and it was actually quite interesting. Devil's Bath. This is the odd one of the batch. Now, it was a foreign film, and it was a horror film, listed as a horror film. But, it really fell more under the realm of psychological thriller, I think, than it did horror. The folks overseas in Europe, they love this movie. It gathered a cult following, never really grabbed hold here. However, I got a lot of response and emails for my review on this. A lot of people over there just held this movie up as some kind of a, well, this is a momentous thing, and this is what. So there you have it. The best movie of the entire month last year was The Prosecutor. This was Donnie Yen. And this is probably Donnie Yen's best movie in quite some time. I totally enjoy. I know it was fabricated. It was based on a real life character, but with Donnie Yen in there, you got to throw in some fighting scenes, and there were a lot of them, and they were choreographed exceptionally well. I rewatched this movie just for the fight scenes. It was that good. It was called The Prosecutor, and it was great. And people loved it online too. To this date, it's in last year of 2025. It's still one of my highest number of views and clicks and what have you when you go looking for that stuff. So what we're going to do now is peel back the veils of time. No, we're not visiting Rex Real. We're going to go back just 1 year and take a look at all of those reviews that I just mentioned. If you've seen those movies, it's nice to revisit them and see what I thought about them. I'm sure we'll agree. If you haven't seen those films, they are now all available on various streamers. So check out the reviews, see what you're interested in, and give them a look. And now that you have learned what you have learned, enjoy the videos. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to go on a bit of a rant here. Back in the 1940s, Hollywood produced an awful lot of patriotic movies, all centered around World War II themes. But the general purpose of the movies was to instill pride in America and, of course, support the war effort. That's really not the case nowadays. It seems now that a lot of the producers in Hollywood want to do just the opposite. They want to denigrate history, accent things that maybe didn't go well, and they just want to pull down America's history and institutions, and they feel they're some kind of virtue signaling by doing this. Back to those movies in the 40s, it didn't matter what the trope was. I mean, some of them were just plain out patriotic. Some of them were really, tear jerkers because of their subject matter and what happened to the people in the story. And some of them were just there really to show the horrors of war. But no matter what the underlying theme of the movie was, the end result was you took pride in America and it was very patriotic. And like I said, that doesn't happen very often with today's producers. You know, it's that way in Korea. I've said for a long time that I think right now, South Korea is putting out some of the best movies globally. They just are. And even in a movie like this historical movie that they've released, tonight's lesson plan, which is called Harbin, they've managed to do just that. You can see as you watch this all of the little foibles that have been placed in the movie, designed primarily to exploit patriotism for South Korea. Now, even in a movie like this, in this type of movie, where some of the things are really, they're kind of hitting you over the head with a hammer to do it. Even with that, the Koreans have managed to put together a really good film. I enjoyed this one. I think you will. And I'll tell you why as cinematic class is about to begin. Your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, another sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. And the truth is, I really enjoyed watching this movie. It was pretty good. A little bit of history as presented by the movie. Japan came in and took over Korea, occupied Korea, if you will. And it took the Koreans a good number of years before they were able to gain their independence. Now, from the time that Japan came over and occupied them, there was some years, I think almost 37 years, before Japan actually elected or appointed its very first prime minister, and that was Ito Hirobune, and he is played in this movie by Lily Franklin. And what the resistance, the Korean resistance, decides to do is assassinate Ito. And by doing so, hopefully they will win their independence. Didn't quite work that way, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because the story becomes a little bit more complicated than that. The man who hatches the plot, if you will, to assassinate Ito is An. And An is played in the movie by Hyun Bin. Now, what happens is he's leader of this resistance group. They get involved in this skirmish with the Japanese, and through using a mastery of technical strategy, they're able to defeat the Japanese, even though the Japanese outnumbered them. Okay, the problem arises when An, who has captured the Japanese leader, decides to show mercy. His idea is we're not all out to kill each other. You have been defeated. You're done. Now, go back to Japan, go live your life, and leave us alone. Now, the man he does this to is Tatsuo Mori. And Mori is played in the movie by Park Hoon. You know what? This guy doesn't take well to that. Okay. Instead of saying, well, this guy was nice enough to spare my life, I think I'll just, take what soldiers I have remaining and get out of here and go home. No, he decides he's been insulted because he's not been killed in battle. So he decides to go after An even harder than before. This also causes a rebellious mood against the members of his resistance group because you should have killed the guys. They take no prisoners. You should have destroyed them. And they see this as a major faux pas. So while there's a rift in this group, it's probably true that An decides his best way to make up for the damage that Mori has done since this encounter, and to finally get on the good graces of his team, his men, he will assassinate Ito, and that should be a big blow to what's going on there.
朝鮮という国は愚かな王と腐敗した時世たちが支配してきた国だが、国難のたびに変な力を発揮する。
하얼빈에서 해치웁시다. 할 수 있겠소?
저도 하얼빈으로 가겠습니다.
안중근, 적에게 노출되면 지금 멈출 순 없습니다. 지금! 아무도 우리를 기억하지 못할 거야.
동지들의 목숨을 가벼이 여기지 마시오.
독립이 되겠어. 자네의 결정에 다른 동지들의 목숨이 달려있어. 내 결정이 틀렸다고 생각하오.
So let's now take a little look behind the camera. This movie was written and directed by Woo Min Ho. He's done a nice job putting this together and leads everyone well. I want to mention cinematography in this. The cinematographer was Hong Kyung-pyo, and he's done something interesting in this. You know, it's not a fogging technique, so don't get confused by that. But the way he's incorporated lighting in his shooting technique, it's really presented with a somber mien to it. And I think that's reflective because this was certainly a very somber time for the Koreans, having their country invaded by Japan and being ruled over by Japan. Not a bright, happy time. So even when they have a small little victories, Hong has put this like color pallor all over the scene so that it doesn't spur too much hope, I guess, for the characters involved. And the music for this was done by Jo Young Min, and the music is fine. It's very good and put together. Like most movies coming out of South Korea, this one is a little too long. They just don't know how to end a damn movie over there. And there are a couple of other things with the editing, but in order for you to have the insight on those aspects, we should peel back the veils of time and head back to the early Cretaceous period for the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic, Rex Reel.
The ending is scattered with unnecessary flashback scenes, and there is time shift narrative at the concluding reels. Still, a good view for a patriotic yet tragic piece of history. Hollywood should make similar.
Thank you, Rex. Gotta tell you, folks, I kind of enjoyed watching this movie, even though the obvious patriotic ploys were rather noticeable, shall we say. It still was an awful lot of fun to watch this, and I think the conflict between An and his men matched or possibly even superseded the conflict between the Japanese and the Koreans in this movie, and that just added to the tension to it. We're going to give it an above average grade, say around a C plus or so. It is definitely worth a view, especially if you like historical movies based on historical fact. And I could see where this movie would go over very well in Korea because it does really boost their patriotism, even though the assassination of Ito did not have the result they wanted immediately. I'll leave it at that. Hey, don't leave this review until you've had time to click the like button and then click that little subscribe button up in the corner so that no matter what venue you are watching this review on, if you click subscribe, every time Rex and I put out a new movie review, you will be notified so that you can stay on the bleeding edge of film production. You know, there are an awful, especially mainstream media, they're not going to touch a review for a movie like this. A Korean movie early in the year when it's not going to be, you know, close to awards time, no one's going to touch this thing. But you get them here because there's a lot of good movies being made, and they aren't necessarily these big blockbusters that are coming out and trying to indoctrinate people into a certain mind thing. This is just a decent, fun film to watch. And you will find out about them through Rex and I. Nobody else does this stuff for you. You're welcome. And now that you have learned what you have learned, here endeth your lesson. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes movies seem disjointed. The title of tonight's lesson plan doesn't fit into the plot anywhere. And what begins as a period cop caper quickly transforms itself into a bizarre conspiracy theory fable that is disjointed from the rest of the movie. I'll explain as cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, another sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies, and tonight's lesson plan is a film called Laws of Man. I have no idea where they got this title from. It doesn't fit into the story at all, and if anything, kind of throws the viewer off track because you won't know what you're getting into. Well, Professor, what are we getting into? Well, Laws of Man begins as a very simple tale of two marshals back in 1963 who need to serve a warrant on a rather murderous land baron. Now, it seems a simple task, but these two marshals have two very different approaches to the law, and it causes a little bit of friction between the two of them and how they should go about serving this warrant. Now, up to this point, it sounds like a typical police caper set in a period. We're back in 1963, and a little bit of conflict not only with the land baron, but between the two marshals. Pretty much run-of-the-mill cop caper, and we're ready to go. But then we discover that the land baron has some rather deep and involved international ties. Now, the script meanders for the first hour of the movie and then attempts to compensate that meandering by jamming a very implausible co-plot into the final reels. Here is a look now at Laws of Man.
Sheriff, I'm Frank Fenton. This is my partner, Tom. We're U.S. Marshals.
Any idea who did this?
Yeah, Benjamin Bonning.
We have a warrant for your arrest.
Man, make a phone call to the courthouse.
Benjamin Bonney is killing people, and like magic, that warrant is suddenly pulled.
It doesn't make sense.
You hear about the murders?
Boys got a grudge and they'll spill blood over it.
Oh, Valley's scared to go near him.
Somebody in this goddamn town is crooked.
Tommy!
Who sent you?
Sit this one out.
Whose side are you on?
You got a hunger, Frank.
You some kind of preacher?
That I am. Why are you here?
There's a man killing people. I'm here to stop him.
Ambush!
There's only one way this ends.
It's time I had the fire to do something about that.
World's got enough fires.
One of the pluses for this movie is they have managed to pull in a rather interesting cache of movie stars. Some pretty big names swing by in this, admittedly, for maybe a cameo or an extended cameo, but still they're there. Frank is one of the marshals, and he is played by Jacob Keohane, and Tommy is the other one. He's played by Jackson Rathbone of the infamous or famous Rathbone family. Armstrong is played by Keith Carradine. The sheriff of the town is played by Graham Greene. Joe is played by Kelly Lynn Ryder. She's the bartender in town. Ben Boney is played by Dermot Mulrooney. He is the nefarious land baron. And the Reverend Whitmer is played by Harvey Keitel. He has a very interesting subplot running through the whole movie. Keitel does. And what they're trying to do is parallel the story of Jacob in the Bible with one of the marshals. It's an interesting technique, and I think it's one that would have worked, but they just don't bring it to its full attention.
Yes, this is Officer Morton with the U.S. Marshal Service. Calling to check on a status of a warrant. Issue 13 November, 1 Benjamin Bonney. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
The warrant's been remanded.
What?
The warrant was remanded yesterday. The county clerk's office forgot to notify the sheriff.
Why weren't we notified by the field
I
officer?
knew it was gonna happen.
Joe Bonney's outside 50 yards away with a rifle ready to blow a hole in the side of your head the second you step out that front door. Now, I don't want to filthy up my floor with a couple of dead marshals, not any more than it's already been filthied. Even though I'd be justified in doing so, because you never identified yourselves as marshals. You start shooting up the front of my house. I have 2 witnesses for it. Now, you fly back to wherever you came from, and don't ever come back here, and I won't have to bleach your skulls and send them home to your mothers for Christmas. How's that for diplomacy, Mormons? I'll take that as a yes, sir, and thank you for not cutting my nuts off.
Okay, let's run behind the camera for you here. Our editor is Nico Elva, and our director of photography is Dan Troyer. Both have done yeoman duty on this, so there's nothing overly spectacular, and there's nothing that's bad. They've done exactly what they are supposed to do. Writer-director for this movie was Phil Blattenberger, and, he's directed everybody fine. The problem comes in the writing of this script. And as I said before, I can see what he was trying to do, especially with this subplot of the story of Jacob, and that really would have been effective if it could have been laid out a little better and given more expanse and more tie-in than what it is. It's not, and as a result, the movie suffers because of it. One thing that never suffers is checking in with the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic. So let's peel back those veils of time and head back to the early Cretaceous period. See Rex Reed.
Laws of Man attempts to justify itself by cramming the conclusion with new plots and a Deus Ex Machina finale. Why is the Black Russian talking with a Jamaican accent? How did the FBI appear at the most fortuitous moment? Laws of Man has no foundation.
Drinking your problems away? The intrepid U.S. Marshal, badge and gun in his motel room, indulges in spirits and barmaids just to ease the pain that he exists.
What are you doing here, Benjamin?
What am I doing here? I'll have what he's having. Make it two. I spent my day on top of my roof plugging holes so that when it snows next month, it doesn't drain down into the house and onto the holes in the floor that I just patched. It's November. It's damn hot, and I worked up a sweat, so I reckon thank you. Deserve a respite from my troubles. What do you say? You put that on his tab, he owes me one.
You here to shoot up my room again?
Someone shot up your room?
You got a nerve.
I would love nothing more than just blow your insides out all over this bar. Can't think of a good reason yet. Go on, drink it.
Thank you, Rex. The movie is called Laws of Man. I don't even know how that fits in. Some of the big name stars who swing by for cameos in this certainly help the movie along. The subplot of Jacob is probably the most interesting aspect of the movie, and yet it is given short shrift. It is not fully developed. As a result, this movie really falters a lot. We're going to give it a below average grade, probably a C minus, D plus, in that kind of a range there.
Greetings, salutations, another sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. Got a lot of show for you tonight, but before we get started, I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that now that the holidays are over, have you noticed this cold weather that has come in? Snowy, especially in our home base here. It's been that. Why not stay warm with an official Outtakes with Rex Real hoodie or sweatshirt? And I've got to let you know that they're on sale right now at the official Rex Real store. You can snuggle up nice. We got blankets there too. Check it out. It's the official Rex Real store. Keep you all nice and warm during these cold and blistery days. All right, let me grab my specs here so I can get into the reviews. I'll tell you right off the bat that this first review comes from Germany, and the foreign critics have really loved this movie. That is probably a good explanation why the Golden Globes are such a fiasco. They're made up primarily of foreign film critics, and the fact that they like this movie shows what their thinking is. The movie is a tale of past culture where women were only of value if they bore children. When Agnes, who is played by Anja Plaschke, marries a man who is not interested in her sexually, she connives various methods of becoming pregnant. None of them work. As the village and her husband's family begin to shun her, she becomes despondent and contemplates suicide. Now, starring with Anja is David Schneid, who is Wolf, her husband, and Maria Hofstadter, who plays the mother. For now, let's peel back those veils of time and head back to the early Cretaceous period. Check in with the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic. Here is Rex Real.
The central theme is the practice of suicide by proxy, a common event in 17th century Germany. Women, mostly, would commit a heinous crime and then immediately confess it so they could die but still save their souls. It was a perversion of Christian doctrine, and Kathy Stewart, who did the research for this film, wanted to demonstrate the absurdity of the praxis. She succeeds.
Gefällt's dir denn?
Das ist schön. Hast du es gehört?
Was denn?
Es hat so schön geknackst.
Agnes.
Hast du dich schon eingewählt? Ja, wird schon.
Ja, Gott wird gefreut haben mit dir, wenn du den Marker essen riechst.
Wegen deiner Mutter.
Verstehst du mich?
Magst mich nicht. Ich fürchte mich tut's.
Jetzt geht es, wird schon.
Siehst du nicht, dass das aber bläder wird?
Die wird sich schon einfinden. Gibst du halt ein wenig Zeit?
Alle sollen wir uns freuen. Schatz hat uns der Herrgott geschickt.
Sag mal, Agnes, von wo hast denn du das Kind her?
Grüßen, loben, benedein.
Jetzt stehst auf und ziehst dich an!
Ich meine, die ist in Teufelsboot.
Zur Frau und Königin. Glaub ich dir.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's lesson plan opens with the graphic based on true events. This is Donnie Yen's latest film, and it contains some pretty amazing fight scenes. Now, I am sure that the real life story behind this movie did not feature a prosecutor with the martial arts skills of Donnie Yen. They may have taken some liberties in that respect, but it still makes for a really good looking film. A cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies, and tonight's lesson plan is called The Prosecutor. I really like this film a lot, and I think you will too. Early in the year, it is definitely worth a view. And as I said, it stars Donnie Yen. Now, Donnie Yen is Mr. Folk. You got to be careful saying that. It's F-O-K. All right. And Mr. Folk is a new prosecutor in the judicial system. And he is so convinced that a subject is innocent of his crimes that he is prepared to battle the entire Chinese judicial system. Now, the movie begins in kind of a flashback with a quick glimpse of Folk's past. You see, beforehand, he was a cop, kind of a super cop, and he was going after this big major drug cartel. And what we see is his attempt to bring this cartel to justice. As a policeman, it provides for one of the film's really excellent fight scenes and certainly starts the movie off with a bang. But then we jump several years into the future. You know, Mr. Folk is getting a little bit older and all this police work is wearing on him just a bit. Knees, hips, typical type of thing that happens when you spend most of your day fighting people. So as a result, he wants to stay with the judicial system and he becomes a prosecutor. You know, he finds that there are certain ways of doing things. He has a mentor in the prosecution department who is trying to show him the ropes and how the game is played. He has naturally a head of the department who likes everything status quo and does not want anyone coming in and shaking the trees, so to speak. Apologies to Peter Gabriel. But Mr. Folk is so determined that this one particular subject is being railroaded and getting caught in the system that he's ready to go through anything. The movie starts with one fight scene, but there's a whole lot more coming. So as I said, Donnie Yen plays Mr. Folk, and he is becoming acclimated to the department of the prosecution. Kent Cheng plays Bao. He is the man who is trying to show him the ropes and explain to him how things are run and how everything goes. His boss in the department is Francis Nin Chen Yu, and boy, he does not like what Mr. Folk is going through in this particular case. And at one point in the movie, they come to blows. But it's kind of interesting because he is the man who likes the status quo and doesn't want to rattle the boat. But when evidence is put in front of him and he realizes an injustice has been done, kind of changes the story for him. The story centers around a young man played by Mason Fung, who is Ma Ka-kit. And he is really caught up in the legal system in a very bad way, primarily because he's been given some bad legal advice from Ah Pak, who is played by Julian Chen Chilang. This guy is, wow, he's a pretty good antagonist. He's a defender, but he's so corrupt and so intertwined with the drug cartel people that he's probably worse than most of the people he's trying to defend. Also in this is Lang Kong. He plays Uncle Ma. He is Ma's grandfather. And the story takes on a whole different perspective when, through a series of events, he is murdered. And this really riles up Mr. Folk and gets him to go headfirst into the shuffling the judicial system. Here now is a look at The Prosecutor.
Mr. Folk，你以前喺警隊嘅喎。而家考入嚟 DOJ， 一定有你嘅高見嘅。
身我哋呢份工作咧，就好似一盞殘顏嘅明燈，將有罪嗰啲人定罪。還無辜者清白。
明知道個犯身有事，但冇證據，我都要放人噶，冇辦法噶。
一個唔賠就會摧毀一個家庭。
喂，你 friend 俾100個人打緊牌，你嚟幫手？喂，唔係啊，打緊100嘅人啊！
Now, behind the camera, Donnie Yen not only stars in this movie, but he also serves as director, and he's done a nice job in corralling everyone together. The movie flows really nice, and it's fun to watch. Writer was Edmund Wong. He has put together, as I said, you could tell the tale is while it may be based on an actual court case. I'm sure all this fighting didn't actually go on in real life. The musical score is outstanding in this movie. It is excellent, and it is done by Choi Chol-hu. He's done a nice job on this. It's very rousing, very reminiscent of some of the golden years of Hollywood type scores, big orchestration and everything. Very nice. The editor is Ka Wing Lee, and he's edited this well. I've said the movie flows nicely and it's paced well. And the reason for that is because, courtroom dramas can sometimes become tedious, and there are enough fight scenes dispersed out throughout the telling of this story that the pace never really slows down too much so that it keeps moving. That said, the Chinese have a penchant for making their movies too long. This one's not too bad. It clocks in just under 2 hours, but I still think maybe a 15-minute edit or so on some of the slower scenes would probably have helped this an awful lot. I'll tell you someone who doesn't need any help. Let's peel back those veils of time and head back to the early Cretaceous period. Check in with the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic, Rex Greer.
Courtroom dramas can be rather tedious, but Yen sprinkles enough epic fight scenes to make this quite watchable, coupled with an excellent score.
Thank you, Rex. Just a little bit of trivia, if you will, for this movie. There are a couple of scenes when Mr. Falk is talking to his father, and he's caring for his father, who is in an old age home. That's really Donnie Yen's father. He put him in that role, so that's kind of cool to see those two together and interact with one another. It was kind of a neat little thing there. Courtroom dramas, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, have a tendency sometimes to, they're very tense, but they have a tendency sometimes to weigh you down because of that tension. And a lot of times after the courtroom drama has been successfully revealed, sometimes they're not worth another look right away because you know what's going to happen. So it kind of loosens the tension up, which was the whole purpose of getting there. This movie, not so much because of the very excellent fight scenes. And I'd like to point out the fight scene in the trolley car. It is very, very good. A subway car, I guess. It would say trolley limits us to Pittsburgh, I guess. So if you look for the one in the subway cars, that's definitely worthwhile. So that helps the movie along, and that makes it worth multiple viewings, because the big thing doesn't become the big reveal. It's how you get there. in this particular movie, and that's worthwhile. You know, what's really worthwhile? If you would just go up there in that little corner and click that like and then click subscribe. This way, whatever channel you're watching this review on, you'll be notified every time Rex and I put out a brand new review, and that will keep you on the bleeding edge of an awful lot of movies that the mainstream media just won't pay any attention to. I'm going to tell you now that with The Prosecutor, I enjoyed this movie immensely. It's early in the year, but this certainly will make my list for one of the best of the year, and certainly one of the best foreign-made movies. Donnie Yen's done a nice job on this, not only in the acting, but behind the camera, directing it as well. I think you're going to like this one. I know I enjoyed it a lot. We're going to give it a way above average grade, probably about a B plus or so. And like I said, I think this is a movie you'll probably want to watch more than once. Now that you have learned what you have learned here at